Well. Good morning, everybody. Let's see if the stream is starting, and I can hear myself, which I then take to mean that you can hear me as well. See if the lag is over. Yeah, here we go. Yes, and I can hear myself. That's good. Good morning, everybody. It's the 26th of February. Let's try to be productive, get things done, all of those things in these next 2 hours while I drink too much tea and get ready to go to the gym. How are you guys doing? So I did actually get to go to the dentist yesterday, and I got like sort of like inset for the tooth that is missing. I'm not wearing it right now because it's a pretty big sort of like inset, and I don't have to wear it all the time. It is, of course, uncomfortable, but mostly it does very much sort of like inhibit my ability to talk normally, which is a bit frustrating. I mean, it partly is to avoid sort of like the hole in the tooth between the teeth kind of closing up because there's like no pressure there at the moment. So I get why it's a bit uncomfortable. It's a bit like braces in that regard, I guess. and uh, but yeah, it makes talking much more difficult and sound makes me sound weird. So now I have uh, the choice between looking like a pirate or sounding really, really bad, which certainly makes upcoming video choices very interesting. Good morning, Britain. How are you doing? How is your break going so far? Now that you're half a week in, are you actually regaining some joy and energy for booktube-ish things? And our Demidrek is here. Hi, how are you doing? That is awesome, Britain. I'm very, very happy that it went well. That's cool. So my question was like, if your friend edited your book, how did you meet him? Did you meet him as a friend and then he offered to edit your book, or did you meet him because you were looking for an editor and then you became friends after he started editing your book? And I'm glad that you're feeling better. I mean, maybe also having that meeting with your friend and all of that does sort of like take away some pressure and give you back some energy and enthusiasm to do other things. I said, when's spring break for your kind of college, Britain? I never understand that kind of stuff. Because like the sort of like college or university semester breaks are very different in the US. Like time wise, they are set in very different times than in Europe. But even in Europe, they obviously vary a lot. Like Germany, right now is semester break until the beginning of April, like first or second April week usually. Sometimes they push it back or forward 1 week depending on when Easter falls, so you don't have to start college and then everyone goes on Easter break for like another week and then you go back. It would be silly, but usually it's like February, mid-February to beginning of April is the sort of like spring break for in Germany, but I feel like it's different in the US. Well, okay, yeah. That is near the end of the Siege of Kapistan, though, which is a bit sad. I feel like Brukalion and Kanadas are really cool characters, and we don't get to see as much of them as I wish we would. See, I used that like for one of the old videos I did on the last back in the day while I was reading exactly those parts. I think uh, there's a German brewery. Sometimes the store where I usually buy beer has their beer as well, and they have the same sort of like bottles that I usually use, like the pop off like tops. But the beer is called Keiler, which is well, Keiler is German for boar. Um, like in German, you have a difference between, yeah, obviously between boar and hog, right? Between the domesticated pig and the wild pigs. And yeah, Kyla is a wild boar. So they have like a drawing of a wild boar as on their label and everything, which is very much the Feiner beer. Ah, okay, yeah. I see. In Germany, like universities are on a semester, not on a quarter schedule. I know some countries in Europe have like a sort of like a trimester kind of thing where you have like 3 blocks of university. It's all weird. Germany has like the winter semester, which starts usually like in October and goes until February. It's like the longer one, and then you have the summer semester from like April to early July, I guess. Um, yeah, and since there's like a bunch of holidays, state holidays, bank holidays, whatever you want to call them, religious holidays in the summer semester, that usually feels even shorter because you have Pentecost, and Pentecost around Pentecost, Germany has like a bunch of like official like religious holidays. Like for a secular state, we do have a lot of those. Like we have Christ Ascension is a holiday, at least in the state where I live. It's not in every state, I think. Although no, wait. Christ Ascension, I think, is in all states, and then you have Pentecost, where the Monday on Pentecost is also a state holiday, and then the state where I live does have Corpus Christi as another religious holiday, and then of course 1st of May is Labor Day, so that one is also a public holiday. And if the semester starts before Easter, then you also have both Good Friday and Easter Monday off. So the summer semester often is like very, very short. I have no idea how good those old Malazan videos are and if I still stand by them. But I did like the first year on YouTube, I did do like a full read through all of Malazan and like basically talked about them almost daily about which part I had read. So there's if you want a chapter by chapter me going through all of Malazan, it is there. I just don't know how much or how I would feel about it if we'll find out when I reread at least some of Malazan this year. I'm sure I will reread at least The God Is Not Willing when No Life Forsaken comes out in October. So maybe I'll also read some other books. Well, hopefully you'll find some more time for reading again soon as well. So are you, playing lots of games instead, or is it just like college is currently just like too much? Because, obviously in 2 weeks you then have like time to go back to, reading and not much else, I guess. Now that is interesting. I don't know why that would be, but YouTube views are so weird to calculate. I mean, you can't basically. So that is, I don't know why that would be. That's not the kind of dream I would like to have, Britain. That's like one of those like basic, like not basic dreams, but like I think a lot of people have these sort of like shame-related dreams where you do something and then you realize halfway through whatever you're doing that you are, halfway naked or naked or whatever, and then the rest of the dream is sort of like deals with the sort of like the fear of being discovered and various failing attempts of avoiding that. I mean, obviously, I have not read that specific book by Freud, but yeah, I feel old Sigmund might have an idea or two on what that is related to. Not that I, am much of a Freudian. I mean, I feel like Freudian analysis is interesting. I don't think it's very helpful the same way that Jungian analysis is interesting, certainly. But at this point, both I feel are more interesting to study as sort of like a literary influence, because you go back and you can always see when authors are heavily influenced by either Freud or Jung, and how that sort of like impacts their writing. Obviously, with Jung, you have it even more because of Joseph Campbell being really deep into Jung, and then writing that in, putting that into his Hero with a Thousand Faces, and suddenly everyone who has read that Joseph Campbell has basically absorbed some Jungian terminology on the side. But yeah. Yeah. No. Erikson is not that old yet. I'm still waiting for him. Like he's currently collecting like a bunch of the essays he has on his website and other essays that he's been working on writing, and he's going to publish a book on I think he's going to call it The Ritual of Writing, and that is certainly one that I'm interested in reading. Like I'm not a big fan of like authors doing their like, here's my book on writing. I feel some of them are interesting. Stephen King's On Writing, or Good Writing, whatever it's called, is it's interesting to see what authors think. What I personally feel is going to interest me about how Erikson approaches stuff is that, on the one hand, he's someone who obviously has studied creative writing at university and everything, so he's gone through the sort of like more formal program. But he's also someone with other academic anthropological and anthropology and archaeology training, which sort of gives him an interesting perspective more on like the sort of like the human aspect of writing, beyond just technique or hating adverbs or whatever it is that other authors put into their writing advice books. So I'm hoping that it will touch more upon sort of like these choices of like why to pick a specific perspective from like more like a psychological and so forth level perspective. And I think that might be interesting to read. So certainly something that I'm interested in. Yeah, right. Like sometimes like the desktop the desktop microphone that I have is pretty good. Like when it's in the right angle, right before the teacup, and I pour the tea, then it does really come through heavily. I've had like one interview with him, like one conversation with him, and he was incredibly nice to talk to. Like seriously, incredibly nice guy. And from everyone I've on the Malazan Discord server, there were a few people like obviously in Niflrog, Oscar. He met Erikson when Erikson was in France. When was that? In 2022, possibly three, one of those. He met him there for like a breakfast and hanging out session and so forth, and he also had like nothing but nice things to say about both Erikson and Esselman, and Erikson's wife, who was also there. So they seem to be really nice people. That entire sort of like group of people that Erikson, Esselman, being friends, like serious, like very good friends, which very much sort of like comes through when you see both of them on like a panel and they have a conversation. Like the banter between the two is just really funny always. It just feels really wholesome in a lot of ways. Like Erikson, we like when we did that interview, like before that or afterwards, something came up, and Ericsson still has like lots of like anecdotes from like their tabletop RPG days, and he's still mad at at this situation where he was playing Anomander Rake, and he got stuck on an island for some reason, and Ericsson goes like, well, I'm going to build a boat, and Esselmon's not. Anomander Rake doesn't know how to build a boat. And Ericsson said, well, I know how to build a boat. I do this and this and that. Yeah, but you're an anthropologist and archaeologist. You know how to build a boat, but why would Anomander Rake know that? he's he's a nobleman from fucking Carcanas at that point, at least. He doesn't know how to do that. Ericsson is still upset about the fact that he couldn't build the boat back then. Um, he does have like a very dry sense of humor, but he is very, 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 very compassionate and that's for sure. Um, yeah, it would be weird if someone who emphasized that so much would not be that. But then again, I mean, th- there is that difference. You can't judge a character by writing. That's just not possible. And I know people claim that, and you can certainly look at specific things, but you never fully know, right? At least not from like one book or anything of the sorts. What I've certainly seen, or like what I feel, especially about Erickson, right, is that he cares deeply, and that is something that does come through in the Malazan Book of the Fallen. Like the things that are like dealt with in the Malazan Book of the Fallen and various places, especially when it comes to sort of trauma and so forth, right? These are things that he really cares about, and you can see that when he writes his essays that sort of like accompany certain aspects. And he cares. Um, he's in that regard, I think he's very similar to say Terry Pratchett of Discworld fame. Like with later Terry Pratchett books, not not maybe in the first one, which is just parody, but from roughly, I would argue, like the witches books, like Weird Sisters onwards, Guard certainly, and later Vimes books for sure. You can very clearly see the kind of things that Pratchett is upset about in the world, and you can see like there's sort of like a moral integrity to both Pratchett and Erickson and their writing that comes through in their writing, where while they may be making jokes and be sometimes very dark or whatever, there is always sort of like that ultimate sort of like staying away from cynicism or nihilism that is never going to happen, because they believe that you can still change the world and make the world a better place in one way or another, and their attempt of doing that is by writing books, and I do very much respect that. Yeah, very much. But he's like his parents are or grandparents still were Swedish, so there's also like a certain Scandinavian laconic part in there, I think. I mean, that was apparently fairly early on in Rake's career, so he was still not on the. He didn't know how to build boats back then. Storytelling for sure is an empathetic act. That is exactly what. Yeah, I mean, there's studies on that. There's like philosophical work on that and psychological work on that. Um, your friend is not wrong. The Color of Magic is a great book. I think, as I said before, like if you know that it is basically a bunch of short stories sort of tied together, and if you're willing to read something that is far more on the let's parody old school fantasy and sword and sorcery sort of train than Guards, which does have like a plot and everything, right? Then it is a lot of fun. And especially when you get to the second part, which is the Light Fantastic, and you meet Cohen the Barbarian for the first time, and really, really fun bits and pieces in there. Yeah, you might want to call ahead before you do that. All right, guys, let's do the first sprints, and those will be until 5 past, and I have a bunch of comments and stuff to get through, which I'll do firsthand, and then we'll see where else this will go productivity-wise. And I am back, and yeah, I hope you actually went to bed, Britain, and yeah, thanks and good night, I guess. Hello, Chantal. Yes, a Demidrek is in fact a priest within the Malazan universe. Pretty high-ranking priest for, of course, the cult of Drek, which is a goddess. I did go through, comments. I did go through some more newsletters, all of that stuff. Got an email from Patreon about tax information. Guess I have to live with that as well, but it is what it is. And that's mostly what I got to. Seems yesterday was a bit of an important day when it came to writing long ass newsletters about how the world is burning. Which, yeah, I mean, it is. So what you gonna do? I did. I'm almost done reading the wonderful book. Well, that's not that wonderful. A Peculiar People, Anti-Mormonism, and the Making of Religion in 19th Century America. Which, yeah, interesting book. I learned some fun and cool bits and pieces. For example, that other stuff I've read on the subject didn't mention, so I'm glad I learned that there was a bunch of people comparing early like anti-Mormon sort of like papers, pamphlets, whatever you want to call it, like rhetoric, was very much comparing early Mormons and early Mormonism to the Anabaptist Baptists and the Münster Rebellion. And if you know me, you know that I'm very much I mean, no, I'm not a fan of the Münster Rebellion. Let me make this very clear. Like it's a fascinating piece of history, but pretty fucking brutal shit, to put it mildly. Very Kapustan vibes in a lot of ways, I guess. So now that's something I didn't know before. So and that's cool because it does explain some of sort of like the elements of the very, very sort of like aggressive anti-Mormon reactions that you see in the like 1830s and 1840s. If you understand that this context is still sort of like ingrained there, which I guess, I mean, the Anabaptists did come to America. Like, I mean, the more peaceful, not the cannibal version of it, which is the Mennonites, of course. Um, Talk is with the matron. Yeah, that's one hell of a depressing plotline. So yeah, so now I know about that Anabaptist connection, which is cool. And I'm almost done with the book on anti-Mormonism and the making of 19th century religion. The next book I have up there is on a list of stuff that I want to read that is maybe slightly connected to the Mormon research, but not only, is of course Birchers, how the John Birch Society radicalized the American right. And that's going to be fun. I mean, I know about the John Birch Society and a certain figures within the LDS Church in particular in the 60s and 70s and 80s, notably Ezra Taft Benson, who was president of the LDS Church in the 80s and 90s, early 90s. I think he passed away in 1994. I could be wrong. was an ardent Birch Society supporter, among other things, and that did definitely influence sort of like policies within the LDS Church, just by virtue of having someone like that in all the really really high sort of councils of the church. Yeah, so having some like actual like sources I could cite on the Stone Birch Society might be a good thing, I feel. So for the next sprint, I'll either make some notes on the Mormonism video because that's the next big project I'm working on. Either make some notes on that, or gather some more like research material. That I think is the main part. I might also have to do like a phone call. We'll see how that works out, but that's sort of the plan. Now that I'm mostly caught up with the social media stuff, I think there's like one final like YouTube comment I want to reply to, but that's like takes a minute or two, so easy. So yeah, gonna learn some more about the John Birch Society later today, which those were some pretty fucked up people, to put it mildly. And Alex Jones famously grew up on pamphlets and other books and media from the John Birch Society, for example, and there's lots more. So it's one of those organizations that may be good to know more about, and I think uh, may have sort of like fallen under the radar for a lot of people in the 2020s now, because their weird and anti-communist propaganda from the 1960s claiming that President Eisenhower was in fact a communist plant in the White House. Sounds quaint compared to what we have to deal with these days, but it kind of lays that groundwork of paranoia and is like a bridge from the more like conservative, socially conservative or whatever, to the conspiracist side of the right. And I think in that regard, they connected a lot of different people on like a secular level, where you have people like Phyllis Schlafly and so forth, forging the moral majority with Jerry Falwell and so forth, and tying the Christian right and Mormons and evangelicals together on like a religious, moral, whatever version. You have the John Birch Society on the secular economics anti-communist side, but they basically are sort of like two different strategies, or two different sort of forces that create the current political climate on the right, and build and forge that alliance between a Christian right that is supposedly about religion and religious aspects, and a hardcore neoliberal conservatism that doesn't necessarily care much about actual religion, but is more about fighting communism. And that sort of connection, I think, lies in that area. So I hope the Bircher book will help me understand those kind of things, but we'll see. All right. What decision is that, Chantal? I mean, so yeah, that's sort of like what I plan to read today. I also have like I said that yesterday. I have like a list, like a two essay collections, like essays and speeches by Audre Lorde that I want to read. But right now, I feel more like right-wing conservatism than feminism when it comes to reading. So I guess that's what will get the priority here today. And then, of course, it's because sort of my plan is to, maybe if I manage to get this all set up, to record the basic Mormonism video, like introduction to Mormonism, during the week, so I can put this up ideally sort of like on, I don't know, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever. And while I'm waiting for people that I will ask to sort of give me feedback on the Mormonism video, I'll record the first video for like a Brandon Sanderson novel, that being for Elantris as well. So because that allows me, when I fly to Athens on, in exactly a week, like next Wednesday, I'll fly to Athens, right? And I'll be there until Monday afternoon. So ideally, I'll have like 2 videos I can put up at in during that time that I need to pre-record. And if that means, having the if that's the Mormonism video and the Elantris video, that should, give everyone enough, like, of my ramblings to watch for for way too long. So yeah, that's the ideal plan. Now, knowing me, that will not happen that way, because I always make these plans and then I assume that I'll be able to record like an entire video of the Mormonism length in like 1 week, and then I find out halfway through the process that, of course, I also have to do all kinds of other things, and then it never does happen. Yeah, that's a lot. The 175 per month. I mean, I don't think I have that much. I wouldn't have that much to spend on a storage unit at the moment. I'll just say that. So yeah. So I guess what I'll do during the second sprint is start revising the notes I already made for the first part of the Mormonism video, then re-record the parts on Joseph Smith's life and early Mormonism with some of the more bits that I now know that I need to add, and then move on and talk about Mormon theology, and then move on and talk about the Mormon exodus to Utah, and then talk about Mormon integration, reintegration into American society, and then about the right-wing swing. Those are sort of like the large sort of like chapters that I need to cover, and we'll see how long that'll take. But it also means that, like, periodically I need to go back and look at like how Mormon doctrine has changed between those different, and to reflect all the changes in society and how that impacts like Mormon culture. Now that's a tough one there, Chantal. Right? Like, I'm really bad at getting rid of stuff. I personally very much struggle with it. I have a tendency to become a hoarder. I know that. I s- I try not to buy stuff so I don't muss too much, but I personally would struggle emotionally a lot with it. I can tell you that. Now that's like the see. Obviously, books are even harder. Now the question is, you know, how many of these books are you regularly going to anyway, right? I mean, I would maybe as a compromise, I would probably try to keep the books that you're really emotionally invested in, and maybe donate the rest to like I don't know, thrift store, some charity or whatever, and especially if they are sort of semi readily available books, which you can then, if you feel the need to reread those specific books, if there's like no like very strong emotional connection to them, you can always just get them from a library. while you still have libraries that work in the US, and maybe do it that way. Maybe that's an option. I mean, that might work in that regard. Yeah, yeah, that exactly the problem, right? Like when there's so many like emotional connections and stuff like that, it's so hard to you know make those choices, even if you go like, well, I'm gonna keep some of them, and then it's like, but which ones? And you need to pick, and yeah, I don't know. I guess the thing is more like if you plan to do the van life thing for the foreseeable forever, what are the chances you will go to that storage union to pick up those books at any specific point? Because depending on where you're van living, right, you can't just go over to the storage union and pick it up. You might still have to cross like half the country to get that specific book. So their even their use, I mean, I guess it kind of turns into their use basically as an emotional anchor that you kind of know is somewhere where you could in theory go to and pick them up if you really really wanted to, but it's more like knowing that they are there than actually having access to them, right? And that's something that I guess very much depends on your personality and like your personal sort of like makeup when it comes to those kind of things. Yeah, that's a yeah, really hard. I mean, I guess I mean, I guess I would probably try to see if I can, reduce that library to, a portable library and keep the portable library and yeah, donate the rest if that's possible. If that's not possible, then I really don't know what I would do. Yeah, 95% is a lot. So, yeah, it really depends on like how easy that, you know, kind of comes to you personally. I know I would struggle a lot with it. I would probably try because, economic pressure and all of that, but it'll certainly put me massively through the ringer emotionally until I reach that point where I can do that. Yeah, I don't know if that helps with your decisions, and how quickly you need to make the decision. I mean, I think you said you want to start like in May or June, something like that, right? So I guess you still have like a month to figure that out. Yeah, yeah, that's the point. Like with like 10%, that's a lot. That's basically like the economic pressure there is more than it, yeah, makes it very very hard to find an alternative where you don't, you know, where you get to sort of keep that emotional anchor, which is part of how economics do impact our mental health in a lot of ways, and how say poverty has costs that go far beyond just the very clear and direct physical stuff. It's like, yeah, like not not being able to afford that kind of emotional anchor, that it's hard. So yeah, maybe that'll help. I mean, I guess you could look at it and see if you can pare it down some and look for alternative ways of dealing with it. Until then, giving you, 3 more months to figure that one out. But yeah, it's pretty fucking brutal. Well, I mean, at least you know you can get rid of the of the color of magic if you had that as a physical book. All right, but let's actually slowly move towards a second sprint. We've run a bit longer today with the chats, but that's totally fine. So let's aim for being back at a 10:15, and then we can round this all up, and I can then take the next bus down into the city to do the whole like gym thing for a while. Well, I'm glad it helps some, Chantal. And if the problem remains, you can always bring it up in future sprints, and we can always continue talking about it. If something comes up. Well, good night, Demidrek. You have well, I mean, it's late where you are, so I hope you have a good night. All right, so see you at a 10:15 then. All right, I'm back. Hello, everybody. Yeah, I did do all the things I said I wanted to do, which means, of course, doing some more research, writing some stuff down, and actually doing the phone call I said I would do. So there's that. Almost productive. How did you guys do? Um, Call of Magic is already sent back. That's like one book off the pile, I guess. Um, yeah. So yeah, I'm gonna go to the gym now, run a bit, go through the remainder of A Peculiar People, and then go and read the Bircher book. I'm very much looking forward to that one. I really need to get used to wearing this sort of temporary tooth kind of thing, but it makes me feel super awkward, and I don't know how much the I feel it makes my speech incredibly hard to follow, but maybe that's just me hearing myself differently from how other people would hear me. But who knows? Something I need to get used to, I guess. All right, everybody. Um, let's end this for today. I will be back tomorrow in the morning, and possibly there will be. No, I don't think there will be a video today. Maybe tomorrow. We'll see. I did, after all, put up the pirate video yesterday. So yeah, thanks for hanging out. I hope you had fun. I certainly did, and I'll be back tomorrow.